Have you ever taken a 100 miles per hour fastball to the arm? Chances are you haven't, unless you are a professional baseball player, in which case I am a fan of you and your team. Please send me free tickets for 2022 opening day. Many players in the MLB have taken fastball shots to the body, but how many have taken fastballs from Aroldis Chapman? Well, he's hit 25 players in his career, and he throws his fastball 58.8% of the time, according to Baseball Savant. So, with some quick math, we can hypothesize that Aroldis Chapman has hit around 15 batters with his fastball, which averages a speed of 99 miles per hour, according to PitchFX data on Fangraphs. Why am I telling you this? Well, if things went differently in Chapman's life, he wouldn't have been in the position to plunk MLB batters with his infamous fastball, and the fact that we call his fastball infamous speaks for itself. When Chapman joined the MLB and made his debut in 2010, it was a league-wide story. A 6'4" Cuban left-hander who can throw over 100 miles per hour. That speed is more commonplace now, but it definitely wasn't a decade ago. Steven Strasburg wasn't the only pitcher to make their long-awaited major league debut in 2010. So here's the story of the hype behind Aroldis Chapman's debut and what he has accomplished since. Chapman started to appear on the radar of MLB scouts in the late 2000s. However, he didn't become a pitcher until he was 15 years old, when his coach noticed how hard he could throw. 3 years later, in 2006, Chapman joined the Holguin Sabuesos, where he was a starting pitcher. Over the next 4 seasons, Chapman improved his control and velocity. In 2008, he threw a pitch that clocked at 102 miles per hour, which was a Cuban record. Not many pitchers are able to consistently throw around 100 miles per hour and continue to be a starting pitcher. If we look at Chapman's stats in Cuba, while he did improve in some aspects of his game over the years, his walk rate was still noticeably bad, signifying that his command and control needed some work. In fact, the level of play in the Cuban National League is equivalent to low A ball in the US. This comparison was made in an article in 2009, so it's possible the competition in the Cuban League has increased. But this 2009 comparison is what matters to our story. If we look at Chapman's Cuban League stats adjusted at the MLB level, it's pretty atrocious. But to be fair, if you do the same to a low A player's stats, you'll probably get the same thing. Still, MLB scouts salivated at the left-hander's potential. He showcased his talents on an international scale as he pitched for the Cuban national team in 2007 and 2009. However, Chapman was looking towards his future. He wanted to pitch in the MLB. In fact, he said this in an interview with ABC News.
I want to be the best pitcher in the world. That's my objective.
In 2008, he attempted to defect from Cuba, but he was caught. He was suspended from competing in the 2008 Olympics with the national team, but he was able to compete in the World Baseball Classic in 2009. During that same year, in a different tournament in the Netherlands, Chapman left the team hotel they were staying at, got into a car with an acquaintance, and waited in the Netherlands until he was able to establish residency in Andorra. He petitioned the MLB to grant him free agent status. Chapman left his family behind to chase a dream in the US, and a bidding war was about to begin. Before we continue this story, I want to add a little more context on what makes Chapman so special. From what I found on a website called efastball.com, the year where pitches over 100 miles per hour became more commonplace was in 2002. Here's an outline of the amount of 100 miles per hour pitches thrown between 1975 and 2001. 1975 is significant because that is when portable radar guns were implemented. This format is a little clunky, but it shows that the fastest pitch thrown was at 102 miles per hour. However, in 2002, 106 pitches were thrown over 100 miles per hour. 42 of them were thrown by Billy Wagner. Then in 2003, Billy Wagner threw 159 out of the 204 pitches thrown over 100 miles per hour. Between 2002 and 2009, here are the amount of pitches thrown over 100 miles per hour per season, along with the pitchers who threw the most pitches per season. A couple of things about this list. In 2007, PitchFX was implemented alongside the radar gun for more accurate readings. However, for this particular season, we don't know how many pitches were thrown in total, but we do know who threw the fastest pitch. What you may notice is that for each season, there is one pitcher that is responsible for the majority of the pitches. That means that while around 10 to 20 pitchers per season were capable of throwing these kind of pitches, This doesn't mean it was as commonplace as it is today. In fact, here is a chart that shows the amount of pitches thrown over 100 miles per hour between 2008 and 2018. That is a pretty big jump over a single decade. Also, between the years of 2002 and 2009, the season with the most amount of pitches thrown over 100 miles per hour was in 2006 with 335 pitches. That year would be placed here. See the difference? While I do think this information is credible, it is important to note that there are some differences between eFastball data and this Fangraphs chart. For example, in 2011, eFastball says that there were 312 pitches thrown over 100 miles per hour, while this chart says it was over 500. However, eFastball does provide references, showing that they use PitchFX data from Fangraphs and MLB. So while I think this site is reputable, it's important to note that some of it could be wrong. However, this does not take away from the fact that in the years leading up to Chapman's arrival, the league was not filled with the type of power pitchers we see today. So, knowing all of this, teams were intrigued at the idea of a left-handed 20-year-old that is able to throw over 100 miles per hour consistently, touching 102 at one point. He had all of the potential in the world. So that leads us to the 2010 offseason. A bidding war for Chapman's services has begun. At first, it was thought that this would be a bidding war between the giant teams, mainly the Red Sox and Yankees. At one point, the Red Sox reportedly offered $15.5 million, and I would guess a length of around 4 years. However, there were sources who said that due to the way Chapman dumped his agency in the middle of the offseason, the Yankees and Red Sox were immediately turned off by his immaturity. But Chapman pitched a workout session on December 15th, 2009 in Houston. And apparently Red Sox and Yankees representatives were there, as well as representatives from the Angels, Dodgers, and Cubs, all big market teams. However, there was another team that went unnoticed. A few weeks later, Chapman shocked the baseball world by agreeing to a deal with the Cincinnati Reds, a 6-year contract worth over $30 million. The Reds were in a position where they needed to make some moves to compete with the big markets in their division. Reds GM Walt Jocketty said that the team needs to make bold moves from time to time. However, there was still some work to do. Chapman wasn't going to the majors right away. He was no Shohei Ohtani. Chapman was still considered a thrower rather than a pitcher. He had the elite fastball and a good slider, but if he wanted to make it as a starter, he had to continue to develop his unproven changeup. He also needed to improve his control and command. Still, the Reds clearly saw a promising future with him. Chapman started the 2010 season in AAA with the Louisville Bats. That was kind of surprising because of how much work he still needed, but he was considered the number 22 prospect by Baseball America. His first 13 appearances were as a starter, where he was pretty inconsistent. However, in the middle of the season, he was put in the bullpen, where he did a complete 180. A left-handed pitcher that can throw 100 miles per hour and has a solid breaking ball. Well, that is all you need to be a successful reliever in the MLB. I mean, 125 strikeouts in 95 innings. That alone made Chapman valuable. He was called up to the Major League squad on August 31st, 2010. Let's look at where the Reds were at this point in the season. This game came at the end of August, the month where the Reds performed the best in all of 2010. The team had created a cushion for themselves in first place of the NL Central. Joey Votto was in the middle of his MVP season, Brandon Phillips had his first All-Star season, Scott Rowland had an All-Star season at age 35, and there were many other solid seasons on both the hitting and pitching sides. Seeing Aroldis Chapman debut was the cherry on top. So let's head to August 31st, 2010, Reds versus Brewers.
They waited standing to see Chapman come out of the bullpen.
Okay, who's a relief pitcher that gets a standing ovation in their debut? I really wish this debut wasn't on a Tuesday. That reception would have been way louder. Anyway, let's go through this inning pitch by pitch. First batter, Jonathan Lucroy. Lucroy was actually a rookie at this point, so he was not an all-star quite yet. Still, he should have the matchup advantage because he's right-handed.
Fastball strike.
98 miles per hour right down the middle on his first pitch. Maybe Lucroy let Chapman have his moment. Second pitch. A nasty slider that breaks right before it crosses the plate. 0-2 count, Lucroy in the hole. 102 miles per hour, the same speed that brought Chapman notoriety less than 2 years prior. Lucroy could barely get his bat on the ball.
And now the 0-2 on Lucroy. See you later.
And Chapman finishes the at-bat with another nasty slider. First major league strikeout for the Cuban Missile. He even had the audacity to dab after his first strikeout. The dab wasn't even a thing yet, but Chapman had to display his dominance. So it can be confirmed that Aroldis Chapman is the true originator of the dab. Obviously, I'm kidding, don't take this seriously. Next batter, Craig Counsell. Counsell is towards the end of his career at this point, so this should be an easy out for Chapman.
Left-handed batter.
100 miles per hour with ease.
I mean, there hadn't been this kind of electricity for any player that's come up and made his major league debut for the Reds in a long time. Ground ball by Counsell to short. That was clocked at 102 miles per hour.
A ground ball for the easy out. The broadcast graphics said 103, but the broadcaster said 102. Either way, it's an electric fastball. Next batter, Carlos Gomez. Again, this is a young Gomez. He hadn't quite reached his peak yet. Let's see what Chapman does.
First ball that he's thrown.
First ball of the inning, clocked in at 101 miles per hour.
Signing the contract with the Reds, and in his major league debut, that is domination. A strikeout, a 1-2-3 inning. Welcome to the major leagues and welcome to Cincinnati.
Final pitch, 99 miles per hour right down the middle for the easy ground out. 8 pitches, 1 ball, 1 strikeout, 1 inning. That was Aroldis Chapman's debut. He showcased his electric fastball and his nasty slider. Since then, Chapman has established himself as one of the best closers in the league, possibly of all time. Less than a month after his debut, he threw the fastest pitch of all time at 105.1 miles per hour, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. In fact, all of the 25 pitches Chapman threw in this game clocked in at over 100 miles per hour. Now, Nolan Ryan threw a pitch at 100.9 miles per hour, but because this pitch was measured 10 feet in front of home plate, it needed to be recalculated in line with how pitches are measured today. With these recalculations, this pitch was actually thrown at 108.5 miles per hour, although it's not officially recognized. Same story with Bob Feller. This pitch he threw alongside a motorcycle was calculated to be 104 miles per hour. However, today it would be calculated at 107.6 miles per hour, but this is also not officially recognized. So a question I've always had is why doesn't Chapman experience arm injuries like other power pitchers? At 32 years old, he hasn't had Tommy John surgery. Why is that? Well, it deals with how he generates his power. I'll let sports science explain.
What you have here is a CC Sabathia upper body and a Randy Johnson lower body. That's why he throws 105 miles an hour.
Okay, this would actually take a long time, so I'll summarize the key points. Chapman's stride is much longer and faster than normal pitchers. He creates massive torque with how he turns his shoulders and hips. Shoulder and hip separation accounts for 80% of velocity, so if you're throwing out your arm, chances are you still might not be creating your maximum potential velocity. Also, he releases the ball quicker than normal pitchers, and he throws closer to the batter as he releases the ball in front of his foot rather than right above it, giving the illusion of an added 3 miles per hour in the batter's point of view. And finally, with a 90 miles per hour fastball, batters have 9/100ths of a second to decide whether to swing. With Chapman, that window shrinks to 3/100ths of a second. So now we know the science behind Chapman's infamous fastball and the story behind his hyped debut. Chapman faced a lot of adversity to get into the US in order to pursue his dream, leaving his family behind in the process. In the end, he turned himself into one of the most dominant closers of all time, a World Series champion, and a pioneer to a new era of power pitchers in Major League Baseball. So the question remains, when it's all said and done, will Aroldis Chapman make the Hall of Fame? It really depends on how his arm holds up. His velocity has gone down a little bit over the years. However, given his pitching technique and his ever-increasing use of his deadly slider, I imagine he will continue to dominate for years to come. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you want to stick around. Thanks for watching.